When winter empties most small gardens, these 8 vegetables are only waiting underground. Their crowns, bulbs, and tubers can survive cold weather and return when conditions improve. This compact townhouse garden uses large containers, one raised planter, and one vertical trellis to keep every crop practical. Some provide leaves quickly, others demand patience, but can reward a small space for years. Cold hardy does not mean indestructible, especially in containers. Roots in a pot experience colder temperatures than roots in open ground, so begin with weather-resistant containers, generous drainage, and enough soil volume to buffer temperature changes. Keep the walking onion and perennial kale near the kitchen. Reserve the deepest planter for asparagus, and place tall Jerusalem artichokes where they cannot shade everything else. The American groundnut gets the fixed trellis. Before winter, group the pots beside the sheltered brick wall and insulate their sides with dry leaves or straw. Match every plant to your local hardiness zone, and remember that a crop can survive winter while its stems and leaves disappear completely. First is Egyptian walking onion, Allium teres proliferum. It is unusually useful because the hollow green leaves, underground bulbs, and clusters of top bulbils are all edible. Give one clump a sunny container at least 12 inches deep, with fertile, free-draining mix. Plant mature bulbils shallowly, about an inch deep, and leave space between them. By summer, the top sets become heavy, and the stalks may bend until bulbils touch the soil and root, which explains the name. Harvest some young greens or mature bulbils, but leave the main clump intact for the following year. In a small garden, remove unwanted bulbils before they root in neighboring pots. The flavor can be stronger than a standard scallion, especially in mature bulbs. Daubenton's perennial kale is a branching kale that can provide leaves for several years instead of completing its life in one season. Use one large, stable container with rich compost and steady moisture. Then place it where air can move around the foliage. Harvest a few young outer leaves at a time and keep the growing tips intact. A mature plant can become broad, so support long branches and replace it from cuttings before an old plant declines. Cabbage caterpillars, aphids, and pigeons may still find it, and a container will not remove those problems. The leaves are best cooked like ordinary kale. Perennial does not mean permanent, but one healthy plant can bridge the hungry gap when annual beds are still nearly empty. Sea kale, Crambe maritima, is a striking perennial with thick blue-green leaves and a crown that returns in spring. It naturally favors very well-drained coastal soil, so use a large pot or raised planter filled with a gritty, free-draining mix. Give it sun, protect it from strong wind, and avoid wet winter compost. Let the crown establish before taking a meaningful harvest. Traditionally, new spring shoots are blanched under a forcing pot, then cooked like asparagus, while young leaves can also be cooked. Do not strip the whole crown. Remove the cover after a short harvest, so normal green leaves can rebuild the plant. Sea kale develops a substantial root system and becomes a large specimen, so it needs more space than a decorative patio herb. Asparagus is the patience crop in this design. A compact raised planter is more realistic than a small flower pot, because the crown needs depth, drainage, and room to build a long-lived root system. Set the crown on a low mound, spread the roots naturally, cover it gradually, and keep the bed evenly moist during establishment. Do not harvest newly planted crowns for the first 2 years. When the plants are mature, take spears for a limited spring season. Then allow the remaining shoots to grow into tall, ferny stems. Those ferns recharge the crown for next year. 1 or 2 crowns will not supply a family-sized harvest, but they can produce a memorable seasonal crop. Poor drainage and impatient harvesting are much bigger risks than winter cold. Skirret, Cisarum, is an old perennial root vegetable that forms a cluster of narrow, pale roots beneath a leafy crown. It likes fertile soil that stays evenly moist, because drought can make the roots more fibrous. Use a deep, wide container filled with loose mix and start with a crown division if you want a faster result than seed. The roots are normally lifted while the plant is dormant, then scrubbed and cooked like parsnips or carrots. Replant a healthy crown section so the crop can return. Some roots develop a woody central core, which should be removed during preparation. Skirret is productive in the right moisture conditions, but cleaning a tangled cluster takes time, so it suits gardeners who value unusual flavor more than perfect convenience. Chinese artichoke, also called crosnay, is Stachys affinis, a low perennial in the mint family grown for small ivory tubers. The tubers look like tiny segmented shells and have a crisp texture. A wide container is useful because it keeps the harvest together and prevents missed tubers from spreading through the garden. Plant them in loose, fertile mix, keep the pot consistently moist during active growth, and wait until the foliage dies back before searching through the soil. Leave several healthy tubers in the container for next year. Their ridged shape traps soil, so rinse and brush them carefully rather than peeling away too much flesh. Container-grown tubers can be more exposed to severe freezing, which makes winter insulation important in very cold regions. Jerusalem artichoke, or sunchoke, is a hardy sunflower relative grown for knobbly underground tubers. Even compact varieties need a large container, at least 18 inches wide and deep. Use fertile, free-draining mix, full sun, and a sturdy stake because the stems can become tall and top-heavy. Harvest after the foliage dies back, taking only the tubers you need and leaving 1 or 2 healthy pieces for regrowth. A container is especially valuable here because any tuber left in open ground can produce another plant. The cooked tubers are nutty and versatile, but they contain inulin, which can cause digestive discomfort for some people. Start with a modest serving. This is a space-efficient crop only when its height and spreading habit are deliberately controlled. American groundnut, Apios americana, is the vertical crop. This North American perennial vine produces strings of edible tubers underground and can climb 8 feet or more. Give it a deep container, a strong fixed trellis, rich soil, and consistent moisture. Guide young vines onto the support, but do not move the container once growth is established. The crop may need 2 seasons or longer before the tubers are large enough to justify harvesting. Lift only part of the chain and return smaller tubers to the soil. Groundnut tubers must be cooked before eating. Buy a correctly identified food strain rather than collecting an unfamiliar wild vine, because responsible identification matters. Its slow establishment is the trade-off for turning one narrow vertical corner into a perennial food crop. Cold climate gardening becomes more resilient when the harvest is stored in living crowns, bulbs, and tubers. Start with walking onion or perennial kale for earlier results. Then add one patience crop such as asparagus or groundnut. Protect container roots. Respect each plant's mature size, and the same small garden can wake up productive year after year. Subscribe to Homegrown for Keeps for another practical small space garden next week.